What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Continuing the month of bingos leading up to the York Show, October 9th and 10th in York, Pennsylvania. Again, I would urge anyone on the East Coast, or even further away, anyone really, who wants to attend, see, and play some of these games to make the trip, if you can. It'll be a once-in-a-lifetime event. Not trying to build it up too much, but it's pretty true. It's the first of its kind that I'm aware of. And I'm going to be bringing several games. A lot of other people are bringing games as well. So we should have a fairly good representation. So for the next few days, I wanted to go over some of the games that are going to be there, at least at this juncture. And of course, everything's subject to change. But I wanted to talk about some of the games, their features, and what makes them attractive from a player's perspective. So the first one I wanted to go over was one that I just picked up, and that's Bally's 1955 Gay Time. Now, the one that I picked up came from Vic Camp's collection, whom you have heard from many times on the show already, and I hope you'll hear from many more times. He is a wealth of knowledge of these great games. But Gay Time, the one that I picked up, is gorgeous. So it's a nice example, and I'm really excited for people to be able to play this one. I had never played one or even seen one before I went to pick this up. So it's a special game to me, not just because it came from Vic's personal collection and one that he's had for many years, but also because it's one of only 2 games that Bally made with the Magic Pockets feature. Now, I know I've had a podcast about that feature in the past, but this game has a lot more going on than just the Magic Pockets. And now that I've played the game, I understand exactly how those work, and I've done some work on the game. I had to swap the control unit motor, which is one of the main motors in the game. And so with that, I had to adjust a couple things, and now I know, for the most part, how the thing works. So that's pretty cool. So let's get started here. Gay Time has many enticements for the player. All Bally Bingo games of this era were what is called single deck scoring, for lack of a better term. Later on, Bally would include a feature that would allow for independent stepping of 3 different types of odds, depending on the color of the line that you were in on the back glass. This is a lot more straightforward. You only have one set of odds. Each of the odds is broken down into a set of 3 numbers. So you have a really large number at the top that's lit, and that's the score that you'll get for 5 in a row. The next number down is much smaller, and that's the number that you'll get for 4 in a row. And then the number on the bottom, which is the smallest, is the number that you'll get for 3 in a row. Now, looking at the layout of the bingo card, this is a single card game, which means that there are only 25 numbers which are represented on that card. There's not multiple cards with the same numbers repeated in a different pattern. It's just the one card. But this is a moving numbers game. And the feature that this game has that allows you to move the numbers is something called magic lines. Now, magic lines are a player-controlled movement of the numbers, and Gay Time has 4 magic lines. So the first 4 vertical columns of numbers can be moved. But and there's always a catch to everything, right? You can only move those numbers up or down one position. So for example, if you want to move the number that's on the bottom of line 1 to the top of line 1, then you rotate the knob at the foot rail for position 1 over to the right, and that will cause it to wrap back up to the top. This will allow you to make a 3 in a row, where before you were all the way at the bottom of the card, and you otherwise wouldn't have made it. So that's a fantastic feature, and there are several games with the magic lines. I've played a few of them. I really like them. Sun Valley has a magic line set up as well that allows you to move all the numbers, but the way that you control them is different. In Gate Time, again, they only move up or down one position. So there's more thinking that's involved, and there's no such thing at this point in time as an extended time tree. What this means is that before you shoot your 4th ball, you have to have positioned all your numbers where you want them to be, and then the game will lock you out of the moving numbers features. So, Magic Lines is one moving number feature. There's another moving number feature, and this is the special one, the Magic Pockets. Magic Pockets have to be earned in the same way that Magic Lines have to be earned by playing nickels. Now, when the feature lights on the back glass, you're not automatically allowed to move the Magic Pockets. Instead, you're only allowed to move them before you shoot your 4th ball, and you can only move them if you have a ball in the top row. So, looking at a bingo playfield, and with very few exceptions, they did not change the orientation of the numbers for any of the 25 hole games. You have the top row numbers 1 through 7. If you land a ball anywhere in that top row, the Magic Pockets feature will become active before you shoot your 4th ball. So in the same way that you are able to reposition the numbers on the Magic Lines up until you shoot your 4th ball, you're only able to move the Magic Pockets before you shoot your 4th ball. You can't do it on your 3rd ball, your 2nd ball, or your 1st ball. It doesn't matter if you have balls in that top row or not. You can only do it at one time. You have to pick your spot and then go from there. Now, the way this feature works, there are 2 separate coils attached to most of the numbers. The ones on the end operate slightly differently. But let's take, for example, numbers 2 through 6. There's a coil that moves the kick out to the left and one that moves the kick out to the right. Those are controlled from foot rail buttons and relays in the back box. When you push the foot rail button, it actuates the relay in the back box, and that handles the kicking. Now, the way that Bally created these little kicking arms is ingenious, because the goal is that the game will not accidentally roll the balls down the playfield. You don't want to have to find an entire new number combination accidentally. So, what Bally did was create this metal claw that fires out from left to right and right to left. There's actually 2 of them in each hole, except for number 1. Now, the ball actually sits right on the indentation of this claw. It's shaped like a large U, and it will shoot over to the next hole, and it's incredibly reliable. Now, if those claws get deformed or there's a problem with one of the springs that's underneath the playfield, then this feature would stop being reliable. But it would always be in one hole, and you would pretty much know what was going on. So, you can reposition these numbers, and it will actually light the different numbers on the back box as it moves. It's so cool to watch in action. And I really do hope that many folks who listen to the show are able to make it, because you'll get to play it. So, one of the best things is that the numbers 7 and 5 are right next to each other on the back glass. Also, if you have the magic lines lit, you can move 4 up, which will wrap, and push 7 up, and 4 will take the place. So 4 and 5 are right next to each other. This means that you can put a ball in 7, and then it stops. It won't kick over into the subway when you push the button. It just holds it in 7. The way the feature was designed, it was incredibly smart. I mean, it's amazing what they're doing to figure this out. Remember, this is 1955, so long before an MPU could tell it, hey, don't actually move that one. It has to know, first of all, that there's a ball in any of those holes, which you can say, well, if that switch in the playfield is actually actuated, then you know. But they do it through a special type of sensor. Essentially, they made a feature. It uses a selenium rectifier, and it figures out that there's a ball in one of those holes or not. It's pretty fancy. So at any rate, you can move the numbers vertically on the first 4 lines if you have the features lit, and you can move the first row of numbers left and right. This allows you to make all kinds of winning combinations, and it's, again, just super fascinating to watch. Very unusual. I've never seen anything like it, especially in a bingo. And I suppose I can see why they took it out, for a couple of reasons. The first is because you weren't allowed to reposition the numbers except for one time during the game. And that seems, a little odd compared to most of the other features and the way that Bally presented them to the player. The other thing that's a little odd about it is that it required a different type of maintenance from the rest of the playfield. The coil assemblies and those little claws and everything are mounted underneath of the playfield holes. So when you lift the playfield, there's a whole set of units which are not present on any other bingo. And thus, when you start a game and there are balls in one of the top row of holes, it has to kick them all the way over to number 7, and then from there there's a subway system that brings it back to the ball trough. Again, really fancy and cool, but it is much slower to start a game than most of the other bingos because of this. So, continuing on in our feature discussion here, there are two different spotted numbers that you can get at random, the number 10 and the number 25. Of those two, 25 is more valuable than 10. 25 is in the rightmost column of numbers, and thus cannot be moved because it's column 5. There's no magic line. The number 10 is in the leftmost column, and it's important to note if you have a spotted number, a ball doesn't magically appear and block that hole from a ball falling in. So, therefore, if you have the spotted number and you accidentally get one into the number 10 or 25 when it's spotted, you don't get anything extra. You just lose that ball. Or, if you want to look at it another way, you lose that spotted feature. So, it's important to play for what you have. The next feature is a corners feature, which will light at random. And if you get a ball in each of the 4 corners, you'll get 300 replays. Now, 300 is the max payout for this machine. On any one game, if you have the odds racked all the way up, you'll only earn 300 replays. So that's very typical for machines of the time, but what this corners feature means is that you can get the max payout just from shooting 4 balls, which is pretty cool, without having to have your odds racked all the way up. Your odds could be all the way down at the second step, which is a guaranteed jump, the first button press that you do. But let's move on from there. There are no rollovers on the playfield, so there are no features that are awarded by skill alone. It's all pay to play. So the next 2 features are the last 2 in normal gameplay. You have red lines on the back glass. If you get 3 in a line, it actually scores as 4. Now, unlike a super line, if you get 4 in that line, it doesn't score as 5. You don't get anything extra for that. So, the other feature is yellow. If you get 3 in a line, it scores as 4 in a line. Now, what's a little confusing about this, if you've heard my previous podcast about Magic Screen games, those are games with triple deck scoring. Triple deck scoring, you have red, yellow, and green odds, all of which operate independently. And so I might say 3 in the yellow gives you 64 replays, or whatever. Well, in this case, remember, there's only one set of odds. So the colors on the back glass don't correspond to separate sets of odds. Instead, they're tied directly to that super scoring feature, where if you get 3 in a line that happens to be painted yellow on the back glass, then it'll score as 4. Again, only if you have that feature lit. Normally, it just scores the normal 3 in a row number. So, that's all for normal gameplay features. Now, this game also has the extra ball metagame, as I call it, which happens after you shoot your 5th ball. Now, what you have to do for this is push the yellow button. And what makes this interesting, this is the first wood rail bingo that I've owned. And I've only ever played them at the York Show previously. Jeffrey Lawton is kind enough every year to bring 2 bingos to the York Show. He will not be bringing any of his personal bingos this year. However, he will be there, and there will be plenty of bingos to play. So that's going to be excellent. And I'm really looking forward to talking with him and all the other bingo guys that are there. If you can't tell, I'm really excited for this event. and I hope that some other folks will be able to make it, and we'll all get to chat. But because in a show the games are set on free play, when I brought this game home, I didn't realize that you had to continuously hold that yellow button as you deposited money, or it would reset your game. In the later games, when you push the extra ball button, it trips a special mode where you no longer have to hold that yellow button in order to play for the extra ball. You just have to press it, or you just dump in your money and it figures it out. That's something where Bally obviously dumbed it down for later audiences, because it certainly confused me at first. And I'm not new to these games, but I'm constantly surprised with new features and differences in how they were developed. And there was certainly an evolution, as you've heard from some of my interview podcasts. So, essentially, the same thing happens, though, where the game will search, and it will either step up that extra ball unit, and you'll see first, extra, and ball light sequentially, or it'll just light one of those, or it'll light none of those. But when it lights ball in either first extra ball, second extra ball, or third extra ball, it will then lift a ball to the shooter lane and you're able to play it. So you have up to 8 chances to get a 5 in a line. And you may say, well, that sounds pretty easy. And in theory, I'd agree with you. The reality is, though, that it is very difficult. Bingos are challenging games, and they require a different mindset when you approach them. I think Vic said it best in the Strictly 6 card episode that we did recently. You have to plan your shots, you have to know what you're shooting for, and you have to be able to make the machine react to what you want to do. So it does take a little bit of practice. You also have to kind of know what the machine is doing. And so hopefully with these podcasts here, about a month in advance of the York show, you'll be able to know what's going on. So a final word about the York show for this month's episode. Not this month's. Apparently now I'm a once a month podcast. I'm not. I'm still daily at the moment. But slip of the tongue there. For today's episode, this is the last mention of the York show, but I'll be on hand, and you can certainly feel free to talk to me. I'm happy to teach you the games. I'm sure many of the other folks that you've heard on this podcast that'll be there will be happy to do the same. And I'm really looking forward to seeing some bright, shining, smiling bingo faces there from new folks who might be interested in playing these games and seeing what they do. So that's all for Gay Time. It is deceptively simple, as most of the wood rail bingos are, and in fact most wood rail games are. And so the other big draw, actually, I lied to you, at the York show, the bingo row is actually going to be right beside the wood rail row. So the wood rail row is one of the features of the York show that I adore the most. There are many machines that come from all over, beautifully restored, nicely working, and they all different types of wood rails, flipperless, flippered, countertop games, all kinds of stuff. So there's a nice variety, and all machines that I love and adore, and several that I've spoken about on this podcast previously will likely make an appearance. So, that's all for tonight. Gay Time is quickly becoming one of my absolute favorites, and I'm sure if you give it a try, it will become one of yours as well. Thank you again for joining me. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at nbaldridge, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.